Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight from home. Like we were all just talking, we miss seeing your faces at the Eco Center, around the preserve. So thanks for supporting us and joining these webinars during this kind of strange time. My name is Rhea Cohn, and I'm the volunteer and outreach coordinator here at the Swanner Preserve and Eco Center. We also have Hunter Klingensmith here. She's our visitor experience coordinator. She's kind of corresponding, doing some loose ends things, but is along with us. And we're really thrilled to have Christy Bills with us tonight. A couple of quick announcements. Thank you, as always, to the Summit County Rap Tax, which is helps support our walks, talks, and workshops series. The meeting program that we're using, WebEx Events, has both a chat and Q&A function, which you should be able to find on the bottom of your screen. There should be like a little chat box, and it'll pull up on the side. There's both a chat and Q&A. So use that Q&A function as we go to submit any questions that you have. And we'll ask those as Christy gives her presentation. So if there's something you want to know more about, please submit it in there. We're taking a recording of this webinar to send it to everyone that registered. So if you didn't make it and you're watching it later, thank you. Or if you need to step away for some reason, we'll be sending that out. We'll also be sending out a follow-up survey after the webinar. And we'd love if you take a few minutes to fill it out and help us improve these webinars and all of our walks, talks, and workshop series. So tonight we're really excited to have Christy Bills, Entomology Collections Curator at the Natural History Museum of Utah, and one of the creators of the Western Firefly Project, which I'm sure you'll hear all about. She always draws a huge crowd, and we're really lucky to have her. We do see fireflies in Utah, so we even see them on the Swanner Preserve a little bit later in the year. But we want to thank Christy so much for joining us tonight, and we look forward to all you have to say.
Thanks. Well, thanks for having me. I'm always super happy to talk about fireflies. Everybody's always excited to hear about them. So let's get started. And like Rhea said, if you have questions, please just put them in the chat. And it's easier for me if I'm interrupted mid-talk that I can help answer questions as we go along. So feel free. We're going to talk about what fireflies are, why they light up, why people say they've never seen one in Utah, and a little bit about what citizen science is. It's also called community science. So what are fireflies? They're beetles. So a lot of insects have common names, don't relate to what they are taxonomically, and fireflies are beetles. And one way you can tell a beetle as a particular kind of insect is that their wings meet in a straight line down their back. And so if you look at that, if you look at the screen, all of those insects have a straight line down their back. Bugs, wings cross over. So this is what I teach kids. Beetle, bug, with their hands. So delving into what beetles are, they're all in the same order called Coleoptera, and there are more beetle species than reptiles, birds, mammals, and fish put together. They're very, very successful, and they have some characteristics that make them unique among insects. They have chewing mouth parts, so different than like a butterfly has a proboscis that sucks things, and a fly has like a sponging mouth part. Beetles have chewing mouth parts, and they are sometimes predatory, and fireflies are predatory. And beetles have complete metamorphosis. So not all insects do, but the more successful and more developed insects do. And beetles are one of them. So we, when we're in grade school, we're often taught about the butterfly life cycle with egg, pupa, egg, larva, pupa, adult. And bees and flies and beetles also have that life cycle. So we have an egg, and then we have this weird, very different looking juvenile that's fleshier, and the juvenile part of the life cycle is mostly meant for eating, nutrient gain, not for mating. And then that adult life part of the life cycle is for mating. So kind of where that fits in with other beetles, where our fireflies fit in. All insects belong to the phylum Arthropod, which means all things with jointed feet. So not worms, they're in a whole different group. They're all insects, so things with 6 legs and wings. And we're talking about Coleoptera, but you're familiar with that now. And we're talking about, they're all in the same family, Lampyridae, which is pretty sweet that they have the word lamp in their name, so it makes it pretty easy to remember, lamp firefly. And other related beetles are flashing, that glow or flash. And if you're really into this kind of thing and the way all living things are related, there's a great website that I like to refer people to called the Tree of Life. And you can kind of see and explore the way things are related on the Tree of Life website.
Christy, I have a question, which I don't know if you're about to cover, but how many organisms are in Lampyridae, would you say? Do you have any idea?
No.
That's okay.
I would say worldwide, there's thousands of firefly species. In the United States, just hundreds.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. There's a lot of things that look like fireflies, though. It's a successful body plan. These are all things that look like fireflies that are pretty cute. So they have kind of an elongate body and kind of thread-like antenna, and they often have this black and red body plan, but none of these are fireflies. They're all just things that look very similar. And the one in the bottom on the corner, or the bottom in the middle, that's black and red with the red stripe down its middle, Eucordia, that's a cockroach. It's so cute. So my point in showing you this is that there's a lot of things that look like fireflies as adults. And in fact, some fireflies are diurnal and they don't, meaning they're flying during the day and they don't flash at all. So things can get confusing. And the firefly body plan is such a successful one that you see it across many taxa. But true fireflies, these are their characteristics. They have thread-like antenna. They have something called cryptocephaly. And if we break that down, it means hidden head. So they have this very regal, sort of imperial cover over their head. So from above, you can't really see it. And then the second picture on the right is the ventral side, where you can see it from underneath. So the head's hidden. And then their elytra, which is the shell name, is pretty soft. They're not a very crunchy beetle. If somebody were to step on them, but who would? And then they have bioluminescence. So that's like the real characteristic of Lampyrids, is the adults can flash or glow. So there are people who get to study the flashing of fireflies and map out the different ways that they do it. And where different species live in the same place, they have to have different signals so that they don't draw in the wrong species to mate. That doesn't happen in Utah, but because we don't have a bunch of different species flying in the same place. But this just goes to show that they've worked out a Morse code for mating. This is also a taxonomic map to show the way that the flashing and glowing have evolved a few times. So with Lampyrids, with the fireflies, all juveniles glow, but we rarely see them because they're down in the mud in places people don't normally go. But not all adults glow. So when you're just looking at all those names, all the black ones don't glow at all. They only communicate with potential mates with pheromones. all the green ones flash, all the orange ones glow. So the evolution of glowing and flashing has happened a few times. Okay, hopefully you've memorized all those names. These are mating fireflies, and they mate in what's known as first position and second position, kind of like ballet feet. And then sometimes the females do not develop fully into adults. They have something called like a juvenile form that their adult is in. So sometimes in some insect groups in general, sometimes moths, sometimes wasps, the female won't get wings. She won't fly around. She'll just waft pheromones and say, like, look, I've got too much to do. I'm not going to go look for you. This is where I'm at. You come take care of business and we'll get on with this business of making the next generation. So this is one of those species where the female just stays in a juvenile form and doesn't fly around. There's a lot of different ways that they get, that they do the mating thing. Okay, so let's get back to Utah, which is probably what most people are interested in. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my career and my history with this project. I've been with the Natural History Museum for a long, long time, a couple decades. And over the years, I do a lot of outreach and education. So I'm interacting with the public, and people would tell me about when they would see fireflies. And I would keep a little list of when I'd hear about firefly populations from people. So from about the late 90s till about 2013, these are the populations I knew about that I felt confident were really fireflies. And I thought, well, there's something interesting there, but is it worth following up on? I don't know. So these are the ones we knew about until about the last 5 years. There was some press in 1991 when a professor at the U asked, kind of announced a project where he wanted people to report about bioluminescence, and a kid in Roosevelt, Utah, found some fireflies and did a report on them. So this is in the press from 1991. I've done a lot of research in every old Utah newspaper dating back to all the newspapers printed, and I've not found another article about Utah fireflies. This is it. So one day I'm visiting with Seth Bybee from BYU, and I said, he studies fireflies around the world, and I said, I know we have some here, but there's just no way for us to figure out where they are because they're only adults for a short time. We didn't even know exactly what the period was at the time. And there's no way for just a few staff people to run around the state and be in different locations at 10 o'clock at night. And we hatched a plan to come up with a community science project where we asked people to tell us where they were and make it a very formal request and ask the entire state, do you know where they are? Would you tell us? And we would start mapping them. So that's a community science project, and we sent out postcards and we mailed them to state parks, and we mailed them to camping areas, and we mailed them to places that sold recreation gear. And I'll tell you a funny story. When we first started, we emailed the person who was in charge of the state parks of Utah and said, do you mind if we contact your state park managers? And he wrote us back and said, oh, I've been in Utah for a long, long time, and there's no fireflies here, so I don't think you'll hear from anyone. So we sent out an email to his state park managers, and immediately that same day, 4 state parks wrote us back and said, we've seen them here. So it was really exciting. We immediately were getting a good response. So I want to segue a little bit to talk about what community science is and what citizen science is. This is a whole new field, well, new like in the last 7 or 8 years, maybe. There are people who specialize in it. There are many research projects that are dependent on it. And it's just a really, really wonderful way for science projects of all different kinds, research projects, to move forward. So one problem that researchers often have is gathering enough data. And that's like the project or the problem we ran into with our Firefly project. There was no way for us to gather the data that we needed. But there's a lot of people who do all kinds of different jobs who kind of wish that they had an opportunity to participate in different kinds of science work. Whether you're in Iowa and kind of wish you'd become a marine biologist, or whether you have a disability and you're not able to leave your house and you wish you could do astronomy, or whether you're really, really interested in your pet's behavior and you wish you could study animal psychology. There's a different community science project going on that you can participate in. Entomology has kind of always lent itself to, I want to say amateur scientists, but really amateur doesn't quite cover it, because a lot of people who are amateur entomologists are really, really knowledgeable. And there's so much about entomology we don't know that it's very easy for somebody to become an expert in a particular topic and know more than anybody else has time to study. Somebody could become a daddy long leg expert and know more than anybody else really quickly, for instance, you know. So anyway, there's a lot of portals, and if there's some form of science that you're interested in, I guarantee you could step in and participate. And it's not just like a feel-good thing, like pouring baking soda and vinegar together. It is like real data gathering. And because of these big data aggregators and the way that we can now use computing to put the data together, it actually comes up with bigger pictures about the way the climate is changing, the way flowers are blooming in different parts of the country and what it means, and just all manner of things. It's really exciting. I mean, you know, not as exciting as the Firefly project. So let's get back to that. So we needed a lot of press, and we were able to get a lot of press on board, because, you know, people want to talk about Firefly. And so we developed a website. A lot of community science projects involving natural history use iNaturalist, which is an app you might have heard of. We don't, and the reason why is that it's hard to take pictures of fireflies at night. So the museum has a website. People go to it. If you type in Utah fireflies, Western fireflies, Fireflies Salt Lake, almost anything, you'll come up with this website. We don't ask very many questions. We just ask for a little bit of contact info, when you saw it, where you saw it, and then we map it. So these are from where we knew they were before. This is now where we know them to be. A lot of places. So it's taken us about 4 or 5 years to get this far, but really fast data to aggregate in the amount of time that we've gotten it. And it's because so many people have been willing to share with us where they knew that they were. These are credible sightings too, because sometimes I get sightings, I have to sort through them all manually. Sometimes people give me sightings that are not super credible. So if somebody saw one at 9 o'clock in the morning in traffic in downtown Salt Lake, then they didn't see one. And sometimes it seems credible, and I'll have to go to the location and spend time there. And I spend a lot of nights staring into the dark and I don't see anything. Now, these are the only localities where we actually have specimens from. This is not including the 2019 data, but from 2018, 17, 16, 15, and 14. These are our localities from that we have specimens. And so far, what it looks like is all of these are the same species, except Moab is a totally different species. And they're super elusive. They're bigger, higher flying, faster, and so elusive. There's at least 4 populations in Moab, which is weird because it's super populous, right? A lot of people hang out there. They're really, really hard to catch and really hard to spot, but they're definitely there. But the rest of the state looks like they are the same. What's not included on this map is that we collected them last year in Elko and in the middle of Idaho. And we also have a really credible population in Wyoming. So the project used to be called the Utah Firefly Project, and now it's the Western Firefly Project. So that's really, really exciting that we can expand to adjacent states and look for partnerships in these other states and get people excited about going outside in those other areas. Yeah, I talked really fast and I didn't get answered by questions. So when I thank my partners, it's because these are the people that make the project successful. BYU continues to do the genetic work on on the specimens that we collect. So when we do collect things, we make sure that we don't collect more than the population can sustain. Southern Utah University also sends students out to collect in those far southern western state areas. Canyon Country Discovery Center in Monticello is a super important partner because they help collect in the southeastern part of the state. We're looking to have partnerships in Wyoming, Idaho, other places too. So it's really, really dependent on the good faith of people to supply us with information, and these partner organizations that are willing to also send people out to go collect at night, which can be a very interesting situation. Okay, I talked really fast.
That's good.
What kind of questions do you have?
I have some questions. And then anyone else who has questions, open up the chat or Q&A box.
I actually have a question that went to just to me. So Ellen Shirk asked, Christy, did you say we only have one species here in Utah?
No, yeah, well, we definitely have one separate species in Moab that's different than what's mostly collected throughout the state. But there are smaller populations in other areas that are less commonly collected that BYU has collected on certain projects. So we may have 3 or 4, but we're not entirely sure. So I think what I haven't conveyed yet is that there's still a great deal that we don't know. Like, we don't know how long it takes to reach adulthood. We don't know exactly what they feed on. We don't know if they're impacted by water pollution. We don't know if they're impacted, how light pollution impacts them. We don't know. I mean, there's just a bunch of things we don't know. We don't know exactly what species it is that's mostly throughout the state. We know it's different than this species back east, but we don't know exactly what it is.
Wow.
Awesome. There's one more that looks like it went just to me as well. So Susan Bland asked, what plants or environment attracts fireflies?
Oh, yeah, I guess I could have mentioned that. So they like really wet, marshy areas. And we've collected them at all different kinds of altitudes, so that doesn't seem to matter. Like Rhea mentioned, they're at the Swanner Preserve, so they're up pretty far, high altitude. And I've collected them at Midway, which is pretty high. And I've seen them living in pastures with horses and cows. But normally when I see rushes and cattails in dark places where there's not a lot of human traffic, then I suspect that they might be there. But it's usually a little bit of spring water moving through marshy areas.
Awesome. Yeah, we had a question about fireflies in Summit County and specifically at Swanner. So you kind of touched on that. But we see them. It's starting to be spring in Park City, so just barely getting there. The rest of the state might feel a little bit different. And we typically see them around the summer solstice at Swanner. We had another question. Can you only see them at certain times of the year?
Yeah. So it's late May to early July. And last year we had a really cold spring and it took longer for them to start flying. So if this is a normal spring, I would start looking for them around late May. So we definitely get a lot of sightings around the 4th of July because I think people are out at night. So maybe they fly a little bit later than the 4th of July, but not much later. But they're only adults from late May to early July. So that's kind of it. And I think that is why people don't know we have them in Utah. I swear, I think it's something like 99% of people I talk to are like, no, we don't have them. I've never seen one. I've been camping for 50 years. But it's because people don't camp in swamps. Yeah. People don't camp where it's murky and muddy. And if you do camp, you're facing a fire and then you go in your tent. So we've collected them in places like Spring Lake, which is a town in Utah County, not Springville, Spring Lake. And it's a public large pond and people go there to recreate. And we turned them around and they didn't realize there were fireflies right behind them. So, and I was at my favorite place to camp and I talked to the lodge manager and he said, I've been up here for 25 years. We've never had them. And I said, I think you do. And I went out that night. I'd mapped where I thought they were on my mile marker. I went out that night, drove the road, turned off my car. As soon as I turned off my car, fireflies everywhere. Yeah. So it's just a matter of like turning off your car and staring in the dark at the right places. The map that we have online, so all of our data is shared. The map we have online is for everyone to use. Please don't violate people's private property. But there's plenty of places you can go. There's so many places in Utah County, Summit County, and Cache County. But there's other counties that are still pretty wet. Davis County, Morgan County, I think, is going to have a lot more that people just haven't reported. Weber County is pretty wet. I really want Carbon County. I will take anybody to lunch if you can get me a good Carbon County data set. I'm super curious about Carbon County. But there's a lot of counties that have so many populations. Anybody can see them. I mean, there's so many in Utah County. I can't believe people don't know we have them.
It's almost like you have to kind of open your eyes in a new way and look for them. And once you kind of tell people that they're here and where to look for them, they're like, oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been really sweet, too, how many people who are just maybe farmers or spend time outside in their youth are like, oh, yeah, I always knew they were here. And that's pretty cute,
That's really cool. We have a question about where we see them at Swanner. So from Ellen. And
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Whoops. Looks like we were a little frozen for a minute, but I think I can answer that if we don't have Rhea. Rhea, are you there? Okay. So you can actually see fireflies. So we're hoping to be able to host a couple of walks out onto the preserve to go and look at fireflies. But that will all depend on how many people we're allowed to gather and those kind of things in the summer. And so one place that we usually recommend is walking along. So Cutter Lane is on the south side of the preserve, which is the side the Eco Center is on. And so off of Cutter Lane, just to the left of it, there's a pathway that you can walk on. There's a little park and a pathway, and if you walk along that gravel path, that's often a place where from the outside of the fence you can actually see the fireflies. So that's a good place to walk along. And I'll send a follow-up email after this, and I can actually point out that trail. I'll include a little map with where that trail is and when we usually see them.
You know what? I'm seeing questions pop up. Are you seeing questions, Hunter?
Yeah, I'm getting some of them. So a couple of them are there any theories on how fireflies made it to Utah? Is one of them.
So they've always been here. They're not great migrators. So if you've ever caught, I catch them obviously for the museum. I don't just catch them to menace them, but you can almost catch them without a net. They're not strong flyers. And they don't, when I see them, they're in usually a population that's not much larger than a baseball field. So they're not, it's not like a monarch. They're not migrating over the Rocky Mountains. They've always been here in these small populations. Maybe they were more numerous before, but man, they're just hanging on. But they're not new. And they're all throughout the state. So there's no way they could have spread throughout the state because they're not good flyers.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So another one was Chris Wright asked, is there a website that sends a notification of where fireflies show up?
No, we don't do that. We don't do that. Also, that would be, yeah. We, Nibley, the town of Nibley, Stokes Nature Center is a great partner of ours, and they do some firefly walks. So you could keep an eye on their events. Swanner, We kind of expect people to do it themselves. Like go to our website, see our data points. Hopefully what they'll do is extrapolate, hey, where's some similar type areas in my neck of the woods that I could find them and contribute new data. But if you just want to go see them, you can see these points on the map and kind of get a sense of where they are. We don't send out alerts because that's not what we're in the business of doing. We're collecting data, not providing information for people, but also we don't want 500 people to show up in a meadow one night.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's one of the reasons that the Swanner Preserve is the majority of it is closed to the public, just to keep that that habitat available for the plants and animals that need it, as opposed to having too many humans to kind of disrupt that. So that's what the guided tours are for. So hopefully people can join us for one of those. Another question was, where have you found the highest concentrations to be in the state?
It's hard to say. The map that's available online kind of gives you an indication. Any place there's a lot of water. So Uinta County, Cache County, surprisingly Utah County. But I'm often surprised. Roadsides. The first time I collected them was in a neighborhood in Springville. I was really surprised. So you can see on the map where we find them, but any place that's super dry, like the West Desert, not likely.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So another question is, can you only see them at certain times of the year? That's a great question. Did you already answer that one? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry, I might have missed that part. Okay.
July.
Okay, so we do have another one. This one says, can people go up River Road in Spanish Fork to the Firefly Farm? Does it require reservations to see the fireflies?
The woman who runs that is Diane Garcia, I want to say her name is, and their farm is called Old Thompson Farm, maybe. Wonderful person. I would say check her Facebook page. I don't think she charges, but she does require reservations, and they're usually all filled up. So I would check with her and just be respectful of whatever her rules are. She's really, really great. And then because you know they're in Spanish Fork, you might extrapolate to other areas around the state.
Marcy Murphy says, do we anticipate firefly populations to grow in Utah?
No, the opposite. So because of climate change, we expect there to be more drought and more hot. And so I don't know for sure. Things could change. I don't know, but we expect them to decrease. But because we're still gathering information to create a baseline about, first of all, where they are and what they are, we can't really look for trends until we know what we have to begin with. So like a few years ago, we didn't even know what we had at all. And so now we're still, we still are trying to establish baselines before we can look for trends. But my guess is that the Xerces Society, which is an invertebrate conservation group, is working on a firefly conservation project around the country because firefly populations around the country are in decline, mostly due to light pollution and habitat loss. So I would guide people to the Xerces Society to find out more about fireflies and what's going on with them around the country, because you might want to go see them other places in the country.
I can throw that link into the chat as well for people who are interested. Question: while on the ground and then rise and I guess like what?
So ask me that again.
Fireflies start glowing while on the ground and then start glowing around a plant, or do they kind of change as they're flying?
Well, I guess it depends on how they're feeling that day. I sometimes see them just sitting on the tips of grass, and they're kind of blinking, and then they'll loft into the air and kind of flash at each other, and then they'll land, and then they'll flash off as soon as you shine a light at them. So if you have a flashlight or a car passes by, they'll shut down. So yeah, they flash when they're landing on something, then they'll flash when they're flying in the air. It's like watching stars twinkle in a meadow. It's pretty amazing. Uh-oh.
They're so beautiful.
There we go. Okay, it stopped for a second.
All over our backyard, and so fun to watch.
Oh, nice.
I'm seeing, let me check the Q&A. Oh, wait, here we go. Let's see. Okay, so temperature is common.
One thing to be aware of is they don't.
Different here.
Well, it's in that time period, late May to early July, but they're not going to fly if it's raining, and they're not going to fly if the wind's blowing, because they're, like I said, poor flyers. And so if there's any breeze, they're going to get tossed about. So they don't fly if it's breezy. So you want to look for a still night that's warm, and you can find them by those dots on our map. But hopefully this is a call out to ask if you know places that we haven't seen them yet, and maybe you travel to Nevada, Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming. That would be especially exciting if you see them there and you can report that.
Christy, I have a question. I cut out, my power went out, so my internet died, but I'm back.
Oh no, okay.
I disappeared, but I'm back. I was wondering what, like, the most surprising place that you've had a sighting. You were talking about like downtown Salt Lake, where maybe there's not real sightings, but people might submit. If there's a place that you're like, no way, and then there might be, if that's happened.
Yeah, so gosh, entomology is just exciting all the time. It's so fun. So we'd heard about them. When you think of Elko, don't you think of really dry?
I think like sagebrush and I-80.
Yeah. There's a base of a mountain and there's springs there. So we got reports from people who, I want to say they worked for a park service or something, and they said that they'd seen them. And I have these really dedicated volunteers. They're super dedicated. They drive to like Beaver to 10 o'clock at night and look around for them. So they were willing to drive to Elko and look around at 10 o'clock at night and try and find them. And they found them. And I was just exhilarated because I believe they were the first flashing fireflies to ever be collected for science in the state of Nevada.
Wow.
Right?
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I know. And collected by somebody who's just doing it in his spare time for the love of science. The first fireflies collected in the entire state.
Yeah. I love that. And people think of Nevada, they're like, Utah's the second driest state in the US, and Nevada's not the first. So
oh,
we lost Rhea again.
Uh-oh. That's no good. Oh, she's back. I saw her.
Oh, good.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. Someone said they saw their first firefly at Great Basin National Park.
Oh, yeah, they have them there. Yeah, they do. Yeah. We collect data from there, but we don't collect specimens because we never collect specimens from national parks.
Great point. Someone also asked, what do fireflies eat and what eats fireflies?
So fireflies are predatory and they eat little snails and slugs. What eats them? Probably nothing. So it's believed that the flashing and glowing is was first evolved to be a signal to predators like the color red to say, I taste bad. So, I mean, obviously, when you're a larva that glows, you're not doing it to attract mates. You're glowing for a purpose. And that purpose is to say, I'm so nasty, I have a neon color that says I am filled with toxins. And then, secondarily, the adults evolved the glowing and flashing for mating. So they're nasty. Don't eat them.
Yeah, gross. Do you know if the what's the chemical called that bioluminesces? I might have been out of the loop.
Yeah. So they bioluminesce because of an enzymatic process. So, you know, like what makes it glow? It's two enzymes, and they have the word lucifer in them because that means light bringer.
Yeah.
I think it's luciferase and luciferine or something like that. I can't remember right now.
I wonder if that chemical tastes, or that and those enzymes specifically taste bad as well. But
yeah, I guess it's something else. It's called lugubrians or something like that. There's a good TED Talk by Sarah Lewis, who's a firefly researcher. And so if you want to learn more, you could listen to Sarah Lewis's TED Talk. She doesn't specify, you know, she doesn't specialize in Utah fireflies, but she specializes in fireflies in the US.
Very cool. We had one other question. How can we be volunteer firefly spotters? You talked about this a little bit earlier in the presentation, but Google Western Firefly Project, Utah Fireflies, and you can easily submit your sightings through the form that Christy shared a little bit earlier.
Yeah, so you can either go to places where they've already been seen and tell us you're still seeing them, like this was on the map, I went back, they're still there. That's great. We'd love to know that. Or if you're feeling up for a challenge, you could go to places that are similar in habitat, like rushes, cattails, like I said, and find new locations for us. There's only 3 counties that we don't have sightings for. I want to say Iron, Juab, maybe Garfield. No, we have Garfield.
Did you say Carbon?
Carbon has a sighting that's credible, but I can't get a specimen. And because it's adjacent to Grand County, I'm dying to find out if it's the same species as flies in Moab. But Carbon County is like a lockbox. They won't. You've got a connection in Carbon County. I'd be super grateful to get Carbon County fireflies. That'd be really great. So there's a few different ways to go about it. I would love to know if you've seen them where we've already seen them. I would love to know if you are finding them in new places, including adjacent states. Yeah, or, you know, you can, if you have more questions afterwards, I'm happy to email, you know, and answer questions.
Yeah, awesome. Carbon County is keeping its secrets. Maybe you can use that map as a travel planner for the future. Once we're doing more traveling, you can plan your camping trip based on where there have been fireflies. Submit your sightings. I have a question from Susan, who's wondering about if there's any good books or resources to share with kids about fireflies. If you have any ideas about that. I think we may have had a Firefly kids book in our gift shop, but our gift shop's not open right now.
Yeah, depends on how old the kid is.
Yeah. This is a good project for the form is easy to fill out. So like older kids could definitely be part of this project.
Sure. So for a little kid, Eric Carle wrote a book in the series like Very Busy Spider, Very Hungry Caterpillar. There's a Firefly one that lights up at the end. But for bigger kids, the Sarah Lewis TED Talk is pretty cool. Now I'm wondering if there's adult themes about mating, but you know, kids mating, it's important.
Maybe do a little preview if you're worried about that.
It depends on the age of the kid. I ran a contest on my Facebook, my not formal Facebook page called Salt Lake Bug Lovers, where I asked kids to just make iNaturalist sightings, and then I mailed them a sticker if they got 10 invertebrate iNaturalist sightings. So I suggest it depends on the age of the kid. I mentor a lot of kids in entomology, and I just tailor it to their interests and their age, and I give them a lot of suggestions. So I'll just throw this out there. If you have kids that are interested in natural history, I always tell them the same thing. Get a journal that's just for natural history, and whatever they do with it is totally fine as long as they write the date, and then they can glue a feather, they can draw a picture, as long as they're making natural history observations every day. Don't correct their spelling, they can glue pictures in, but natural history journaling is like, I think, the best suggestion for kids that are interested in science.
It's even a good option. Hunter and I have both started writing things down a little bit more, because on the preserve, we are like, when did that happen? When did we see that firefly? So we love nature journaling, and it's great for all ages. You mentioned the Salt Lake City bug lovers. If anyone here is interested in insects, likes to help ID, wants, everybody get, I'm just plugging Salt Lake City bug lovers on Facebook. I love it. Our whole staff loves it. And everybody should get on there if you have a Facebook. Best group on Facebook.
Yeah,
wow.
So great.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a couple of questions that I think were sent to just to me. You want me to read them?
Yeah.
So Curtis Cook said that as a kid in Indiana, they would go out in the backyard and catch lightning bugs, always release them. But he said that they made your hands smell kind of odd. Do you think that that's due to the bioluminescence?
No, it's probably due to it's probably due to defensive chemicals. So Curtis, I think the fireflies were telling you not to eat them.
That's so cool.
They're saying, I smell bad, I taste bad, kind of like a garter snake. If you pick up a garter snake, it may like secrete some kind of musk smell that's like, hey, I taste bad. You don't want to proceed any farther.
Yes.
Action.
Yeah.
Awesome. One other one was, how are fireflies different from the fireflies I know from the, how are Utah fireflies different from the fireflies I know from the Midwest?
We have a different species here. So I don't know what species, what you're referring to, but what we have here is most closely related to Pyractomena dispersa. There's a lot of different species in the whole United States, mostly Pyractomena photinus and photurus. But I don't know what species you have here. But what we have here is limited by our climate. So, you know, it's mostly dry in the hot summer. So they're not flying in August, late July. So in the Midwest, you know, people tell me they're super numerous and they have them in suburban backyards. And we just don't see that here because it's not wet enough. So unless, you know, some people have them in their backyards if they live in a very rural community, but you're not as likely to see them in your backyard here.
That makes sense. Jessica asked, what's your craziest firefly story, if you have one? Your longest chase or your longest night, or
wow,
got away.
Well, I love a lot of things about entomology. I manage the collection, so it's an intersection between people, history, geography. You know, there's a lot of intersecting disciplines. And this Firefly project is an intersection between travel, rural communities, culture clashes. So because so many people are volunteers and contribute so much time, it's so great. But we do have to, and I find we have the most success when people report a data location and then I send a volunteer out to meet with the data reporter. So the first year I thought I'll just go to the places by myself and stare off into the dark and I'm sure I'll find them. And it didn't work for an entire year. So from Moab to Bear Lake, I spent an entire summer staring into the dark. It was not great. So now we meet with the data reporter. But here's the thing. You have to meet with the data reporter, somebody you've never met before, at 10 o'clock at night in a dark field. So there's been police called on us. We had a volunteer break her leg. We had inappropriate advances from a data reporter. We've had one data reporter cancel because he got arrested. Yeah, so things have been kind of weird. So sometimes in these rural communities, people are not happy to have us there because they think that we can cause some sort of harm to their community or to the population, which is super unfortunate because, you know, we're invested in protecting it and we can't do anything. Yeah, so weird things have happened, that intersection of culture and, you know, science communication. A lot of people have been just fantastic and super excited to participate, but there's been some weirdness for sure.
I'm sure that was a great question, Jessica. Yeah, for the late night meetups, always get lots of interest from the neighbors.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you guys covered this already, but do you have any tricks for getting good photos?
That's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Get a professional photographer. Yeah, it's hard. We went to this community outside of Ephraim called Chester. Oh, so beautiful. And we went with some people from Spy Hop. So completely professional, well skilled. And we just tromped through this meadow for a couple hours while they tried to shoot, you know, things happening. They need the light on to see the people. Every time you turn the light on, the fireflies stop. One of our volunteers, who's just super, super great, brought some in his house and then like set up all kinds of lighting situations. It's nearly impossible. If you can figure it out, please let me know, because I've tried many things. It's not too hard to get them, you know, if you bring them in and they're alive and you just light them from above, but to try and get them glowing.
Yeah, not the iPhone camera.
Somebody who's more skilled than me, but believe me, I have 3 professional photographers who have had work on it, and we've gotten some good results, but it is not easy. It's not easy. Yeah.
We have found some in the day on the Swanner Preserve, which if you want to get a photo, I think doing it in the day, learn what they look like. So if you happen to see one in the day when you're out, that's the only good photo we've ever gotten of fireflies. Was with like a macro lens, but it wasn't glowing, and the picture makes me more excited than anyone else that sees it. So
did you see Paul's question?
Oh,
I think it just popped up. So Paul asked, have fireflies shown up in any of the histories and art of any of the native peoples of Utah?
Wow, great question.
Paul, that is such a great question. One thing that we haven't tapped, 2 things we haven't tapped. One is I would love to have somebody go through old pioneer diaries, because lightning bugs or fireflies have got to be mentioned somewhere, right? In pioneer diaries.
Oh, yeah.
And 2 is respectfully asking the Native American communities if we can check out their property, you know, their land, and also asking about their relationship with fireflies. But I want to make sure that I do it right, and I want to do it respectfully. So we haven't tapped into that yet, but that's something I've been thinking about for sure.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a great question, Paul.
Yeah,
I would think definitely in some pioneer diaries, like where they're going to water, like places like the preserve, which there weren't Mormon pioneers at, but there's fresh water and fireflies. So, Dean has a question. Do you know where fireflies lay their eggs in the wetland, and where the larvae pupate to adult stage? So this might be kind of a Swanner specific question, and I don't have the answer. And I'm not sure if we touched on the life cycle locations yet.
We don't know. So it's something that we're hoping to start investigating. In fact, before we started the talk, I was talking to Rhea about looking around outside and Hunter about they should be pupating into adults very soon. And so the pupa might be on trees or shrubbery near the ponds right now, and I don't even know what they look like. We don't know. So researchers are very, very interested in what the larvae look like right now and what the pupa look like right now. And we don't know. There's just so much we don't know yet.
That's one answer that's always kind of frustrating, but I think is so cool about science is like how much we don't know and how much there is to find out about these kind of things that people are like, oh yeah, I'm sure everybody knows where they pupate and what they're doing and what they look like, but there's so much we don't know, which is why it's so cool to get involved and help researchers find answers to these questions.
Mm-hmm. I've always known that about entomology. I mean, it's a very cool thing that there's so much about entomology that's yet to be discovered, that's yet to be understood. There's probably bugs in your backyard right now that don't have names, you know, and if you spent the next 2 or 3 years just studying that one taxa, you could become the world expert on that taxa for real. But I never expected that something as charismatic as fireflies were right under our noses, and that we just had to start asking people and we would start finding them all over the entire state. I mean, if something as charismatic as fireflies are all over the state and we just are not going outside at the right time in this super recreationally oriented state, what else is out there? You know, it's very exciting.
Seriously, that's a great thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not seeing these little flashing guys, then I'm sure there's plenty more that we just haven't found or paid attention to or dialed our eyes into yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not seeing new questions. I don't know, Hunter, if you have any.
I think there's a couple more. So one was, have you ever seen fireflies in Big Cottonwood Canyon or in those areas?
There were some collected at, let's go back to here. Let's see.
I'll pull the map up on my web browser too, because I know you can kind of zoom in, but that's a good question. I'm not really sure.
I think there is a place, is it called Big Springs? Maybe? You're right, I can't zoom in on that, huh?
I'm checking out there's a Utah Firefly sightings. If you Google the Western Firefly Project, or any.
I included the link just for the map in the Q&A. So if you go to the Q&A, you should hopefully be able to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I don't see one in Big Cottonwood. I see one at Snowbird, and that's it as far as Big and Little Cottonwood. Even Mill Creek, it doesn't look like it has any sightings, or Parley's Canyon.
Yeah.
Liberation Canyon, all these canyons, I don't see any sightings except for that one at Snowbird. So
I think there's one at a place called Big Springs, though. So, yeah, but I feel like there's a lot of places where people are just not looking at night. So there might be some that we just are not aware of.
Yeah, it seems like it's really all about being in the right place at the right time.
And honestly, just turning your head in the right direction. Like that huge population I found where I like to camp in the Uintas, I had looked there at night before, but I just hadn't looked in the right places because I hadn't, I wasn't good at it yet. Mm-hmm. And then when I was up there last year, I knew what they looked like, and they were right by the road. And there was at least a mile stretch of them where they were everywhere. But if you drove past with your car, you would never see them. All you have to do is pull over and turn off your car, and there they are all over.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's really cool. That's kind of like when we have looked for them on the preserve. We're near some roads. And so unless you're thinking fireflies, they're not in these extremely vast numbers where you're like, oh my gosh, a bunch of fireflies. You're like, maybe that was a reflection of a headlight, or I don't know, or someone with a headlamp, or you don't even consider it. But once you start thinking fireflies, then you see them.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, it sounds like fireflies are out about the same time as mosquitoes. Does mosquito repellent hurt fireflies, or would that repel fireflies as well?
Fireflies aren't going to land on you,
Mhm.
and if you have mosquito repellent on you, it's probably not going to be good for the fireflies.
Yeah.
However, there are most places when you're going out looking for fireflies that, yeah, you're going to get bit a lot. So wear mosquito repellent. I mean, once you've caught an adult firefly, it's probably already mated. I'm more worried about you. You know, don't get bit all over by fireflies. Wear a long sleeve shirt or something. I did want to say something else about that. If you have 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, let them play with worms, let them play with potato bugs. If you have big kids and they really want to make an insect collection, collect bees, collect bugs, do your thing. Only bugs that I say don't go collect them, because the populations are somewhat sensitive. They're not protected, there's no federal law, but each population is not really strong or large or vibrant. So if you see them and you really want to collect them, put one in a jar and let it go. You know, it's really not going to hurt any other population of insects if you collect them. Even, you know, a butterfly, it's fine. But with fireflies, it's really not great to collect and take too many adults out of the population.
Yeah, good PSA. Don't handle them. Probably not with, especially not with mosquito repellent on your hands as well.
Yeah.
I have another question. Sorry, before we go on. Definitely good to be super cautious, but awesome, like you said, for kids to be able to like explore other insect populations and find that like deep connection with them, so that as adults they feel more engaged in protecting species that they love. So Chris asked if red light from like a red headlamp would repel the fireflies, or if they can see that. Do you know if they can see that or not?
I don't know. Do an experiment and get back to me.
Love it.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Jessica asked if there's a queen firefly.
No, they don't work like that. They don't work like that.
So that's like bees and ants, but a lot of insects don't have that kind of division of labor in the way that bees and ants do with queens.
Yeah. I would like to say I'm the queen of firefly.
Yeah, there we go. There is a queen firefly, and it's Christy.
No. Sarah Lewis knows a lot more about fireflies than I do. So if anybody's a queen, it's Sarah Lewis. You should watch her TED Talk.
I think Hunter linked that in the chat, so you guys can check that out. And if you guys have any questions later, you can follow up with myself or Hunter. I'm sure Christy's happy to answer more questions in the future too. Mm-hmm. We love all these questions we got from you.
Yeah, I want to talk about plants all day.
Yeah, best day ever. I'm not seeing any more for now.
Okay.
So
I don't think that I have any either. I did see one earlier that asked if you've ever run into any dangerous animals while you're looking for fireflies.
Yes, people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people are the only dangerous animals in Utah that I worry about. So one of the things about entomology and talking about the intersection of different disciplines that I like is the intersection about entomology and human psychology. So entomology intersects with fear a lot. People talk a lot about their relationship with insects and wonder and interest and curiosity and fear. So I talk a lot about what actually is dangerous. And I think it's really important for us to be aware of what is statistically dangerous and what is not dangerous. So the most dangerous animal in the state of Utah, besides humans, is the mule deer, because they cause car accidents. So I tell little kids, just wear your seatbelt and you're safe from the most dangerous animal. We don't have brown recluses in Utah. Rattlesnakes have only killed 2 people in Utah in the last 100 years. So your danger is from, you know, other people, car accidents, not getting outside and exercising, you know. So yeah, not really dangerous animals. They'll mostly run away from you.
PSA. I just want to repeat like the Facebook group for everybody, the Western Firefly Project. So Lori asked for a quick repeat just for everyone while we're wrapping up. Salt Lake Bug Lovers is the awesome Facebook group that everyone should join if you're interested in not only fireflies, but other insects as well. And then Google the Western Firefly Project, Fireflies in Utah. Hunter shared the link to the page where you can submit your sightings, and there's the map, but it should be the first thing that comes up. So
I'll also be sending a follow-up email to everyone who's registered with this. We've recorded this lecture, so I'll send you the recording in case you want to go back and look back at anything. And then there'll be a survey included, so if you could please fill that out, that would be wonderful. And then the last thing that we'll include is the links to our favorite Facebook pages, to the project, and maybe to some other resources. Christy, I have a question for you. So I just found the firefly.org, Firefly Conservation and Research. Is that something that is reputable and that you've used before?
I don't know. Is it from the Xerces Society?
It's not. It's a different website. I do have the Xerces Society link, though, so I'll send that one as well. And I'll send that to you, Christy, and you can tell me if you think it's real.
Okay.
Got it. Cool. Well, I loved all your questions. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. I want to say a huge thank you to Christy for taking time to tell us all about the awesome fireflies from the Firefly Queen herself.
It was super fun. I want to talk about fireflies all the time, and I just want to encourage everybody to go outside and enjoy the spring wildflowers and take pictures and post them to iNaturalist. Fireflies are great, but there's also so many other great bugs and flowers out there right now, and trees.
Yeah, stuff's coming up in our own backyards. Hunter made a great video that was on our Facebook last week about using iNaturalist, so go check that out.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you all for coming. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, everybody, for your great questions.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Thank you, Christy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.